here with Jeff Becker, partner at Antler and the author of The Monday Morning Meeting. Why Monday Morning Meeting? That's like the worst thing in the entire world to title something, because no one likes those kind of things.
Yeah.
What's the philosophy around naming your newsletter that?
So actually, I worked at LinkedIn for 9 years.
Yeah.
Like 9 jobs over 9 years there. And in the years that I had a Monday morning meeting, the teams did fantastic. In the years I didn't, they didn't. And it was actually a manager of mine in my first role there that did it, that I picked it up from. And we would get there early. We would talk about what we did that weekend. It was literally like a nothing meeting. And we would just get there early. We would shoot the shit. We would talk about whatever went on that weekend. Yeah. It turned out the team became so close that we would always joke about, like, once you heard one weekend recap, you heard all of them because we all hung out together.
Yeah.
But what I noticed was at 9:30 when the meeting was over, everyone was at their desk and working. Like they were there early, they were clearing out the cobwebs of the weekend. And whether you get like an extra 30 minutes or hour or 2 hours back in your Monday and your week gets started really efficiently, that really compounds over the course of a month, a week, a quarter, et cetera, or a week, a month, a quarter, et cetera. And in sales, if you put in an extra few hours a day, you end up with an extra quarter in your year.
For sure.
And so at least managing those sales teams, Monday morning meeting was really a function of like a good ritual that gets you to the office early, that clears out this kind of social stuff about the weekends, and sort of the superstition of having that early morning Monday meeting actually leading to better results compounded over the years. So when I left LinkedIn, I started this Substack Monday morning meeting. It causes me to get to the office every Monday. I write something up in the morning. I get my thoughts out. It helps me think. It also gets my week started. So like by 9 o'clock, not only have I like cleared those cobwebs, I've like thought through something meaningful about the business. I've shot it out to the world. I've compounded our brand, hopefully. Hopefully didn't embarrass myself.
Well, if you do, then it's like you get more content out there. You get more clicks if it's embarrassing.
All press is good press or something?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, that's where it originated from. It's evolved into sort of like what I think about venture, what I think about building companies, frameworks for operating. And yeah, it's actually turned this like amazing thing that I feel like this like responsibility to keep doing it. I don't love doing it. It's sort of like but it is sort of this thing that like people now expect. So it's cool to see it grow. It's cool to see it have a compound. And then also just to refine my own thinking. I think people see me evolving as a manager and as a operator that works as hard as my founders, which is ultimately what I think we should all aspire to as investors.
Right.
So
I think this is a great springboard to all these other conversations I want to have with you. And it seems like you prioritize efficiency and productivity. But to be able to do that, you have to have a good morning routine. What's your morning routine?
Morning routine.
If you got
one. My real morning routine is different than my ideal morning routine.
Okay, you get both.
Yeah, well, my ideal morning routine and what I used to do every morning was like, you're up at 6, the classic, like meditate for 10 to 15 minutes. My headspace streak is very long. I'm proud of it. Hit the gym, right? If you're not set with your...
bro?
No. I used to go to the gym. When I worked at LinkedIn, we had a gym in the office.
Oh,
it was
that's
amazing.
So nice.
And breakfast.
You got to get an Antler gym put in here.
I know. We need a gym and we need breakfast. I feel like that changes your whole life and your whole day. But yeah, some kind of workout. You got to be in tune with your body. You got to feel good about yourself. That obviously has great effects. And then in the office before others, just honestly like clear the inbox, get back to inbox 0. Clears your mind. It clears like your headspace for being in meetings with founders all day. You don't want to be thinking about something else when you're with somebody. And then from there on out, like honestly, my calendar is pretty much like anywhere from like 15 to 30-minute meetings, sometimes 45, all the way through the day. I mean, like literally, I'll be here at like 8:30 or 9.
Schedule, dude. It's like
and just gotta pack it in.
Back to back to backs every single day.
Yeah,
Do you have ones that overlap? Like
I only be double booked, but like I'm only going to one meeting, honestly. But no, I mean, I think it's important. I think people talk about burnout, but like if you hear Sam Altman talk about it, he's like, if you're getting burned out, you're working on the wrong thing. It should be fun to like sit here and talk to you. It should be fun to go talk to the founders. It should be fun to go like reach out to LPs and try to fundraise. Like all those sorts of things are opportunities to like do something you really enjoy. If you're not enjoying it, like you're gonna get burned out. So I do try to stack the days. I also try to take a lot of time off when I can, so that like I can refresh, like hunt like a lion or whatever they say.
For sure.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just sounding like a tech bro right now.
Well, that's how we're supposed to be in the space. We're bros and we're in tech, right? You mentioned you were at LinkedIn for 9 years. I would imagine over the years you've probably gotten some really awful DMs on LinkedIn. If there's one you could think of most recently, what's the worst LinkedIn DM that you've received?
No, I don't think I get any bad LinkedIn DMs.
Really?
Honestly,
Just like cringe ones that are like fund my company right now.
There are people that are always like following up. There's people that are always, articulating what they're doing in a way that I wouldn't do. And so there's like a natural inclination to like give them feedback. Like, I want to help you. I feel like you can do this better.
Or something.
But the thing about LinkedIn, which you got to love, is that everybody is there to pursue like a better version of themselves. Sometimes that comes across in like selling themselves or selling a product.
Yeah.
Sometimes that comes across in like those really cringy, look how great I'm doing kind of posts. But like, you have to appreciate that there's this place in the world where all these professionals have their, brand and their identity, and they're like out there trying to create like a better life for themselves, for their families, for their companies. They care enough about what they're doing to be there and to be like trying hard. And like, you just gotta appreciate that ecosystem didn't exist 20 years ago. And then the fact that I was there for so long and watching it being built, like, it really is like a members first ecosystem. Like, all the members are there, with good intentions for the most part. I don't really get a lot of stuff that, is crazy or like cringeworthy or something that I don't at least respect where they're coming from and why they're trying to, reach out.
You're building in New York City, and I'm curious, do you think there's ever a chance that New York will surpass San Francisco as being the tech hub of the world? Will it always be Silicon Valley as number one?
I don't know like what'll be number one or what won't be number one, but I do think that similar to like the automotive industry that like built America, right? You had like Detroit and you had other cities that became massive because of this industry that was being built at the time. I think tech is the same way. Like, if you look at what's happening in the world, like bigger or smaller, there are just many more tech hubs. Like, if you look at Antler, we're in 30 cities around the world. We're seeing this butterfly effect, where like PayPal Mafia is a great example, but you also now have LinkedIn Mafia and a bunch of others. And you're seeing that in India, you're seeing that in Korea, you're seeing that in Toronto, you're seeing that in New York, you're seeing it everywhere. And so I think each of those cities' flywheels are spinning. San Francisco's is spinning much faster. They're printing more millionaires by virtue of equity. But there are other places in the world that are starting to get their first unicorns and second unicorns, and now that second and third generation of founder and those employees that were there have the capital to do this. But it takes a long time to build value in tech, and so it'll take many cycles. I think all of these cities are going to be much bigger than they are today. Whether one's in first or second, I don't know. But like, the pie is growing, and I think that's the important thing.
I'm based in Austin, Texas, and I love Austin, and I'm from Texas, so I'll support Austin till the day I die. But I feel as if there's almost too much distraction in Austin for a leisurely life, or the work-life balance there is really, really pushed heavily, rather than New York and the Bay Area. What does a town like Austin have to do to become more gritty, or to become a closer competitor to a Bay Area or New York or Boston or LA?
I'm biased on this, but if you spend any time in New York or San Francisco, there's a culture of that city. There isn't that distraction of like paddleboarding in Austin or like going down to the lake or whatever. I mean, it is amazing to be on a boat in Lake Austin.
The water when it's hot outside.
But it's up to the founders, right? Like, it's up to the founders to create culture for themselves and for the people they're around. And as a founder starting a company, time now is more valuable than time in the future. Right? And so you need to sort of embody this front loading of your time. You need to be all in early, because let's say you're starting a company and you go on vacation. The company's not doing anything, right? 5 years from now, that won't be the case, because you will have hired people, you will have written lines of code, and you'll have raised capital to buy things. Like, those three forms of leverage don't exist at day zero. They will exist in like year 3, 4, 5. And so the idea is to front load your time as much as possible to get to those points of leverage, because once you're out of kind of this part of the cycle, then you're in leverage creation mode. The revenue that you bring in can fund kind of new forms of leverage, new talent, new technology, new people, like all sorts of ways of operating that aren't possible when you're a company of like one or two. So if you're a founder in one of those cities, you have to be very thoughtful about what's the culture of your company, even if you're a company of one. How hard do I work? Who do I surround myself with? Are we in person? What's the shipping cadence? What's the iterative feedback cycles that are happening? And a lot of people just aren't willing to put in what it takes, or they're not exposed to what it takes, and so they don't know and they don't actually do it. But if you spend time with or listen to like any of the greats, like Elon Musk is sleeping on the floor of the factory, right? There's that story that was mentioned in his biography, or the biography that was written about him by Walter Isaacson, where he says like they were in a plane and they were basically debating this topic of like taking out this data center in Seattle, and Elon was like, let's just turn the plane around and go do it ourselves. And they went to this data center, they ripped up the floorboards, they shut that thing down, and they saved a bunch of money for Twitter when he was taking it over. And it's like, this guy is one of the wealthiest people in the world, and he's willing to like get on his hands and knees and rip up floorboards, right? Like that kind of mentality, it's not a coincidence that he's as successful as he is relative to what he's willing to put in. Yeah. And you can talk to like anybody, like Reid Hoffman will tell you that there's no such thing as balance. Yeah. Mark Laurie will say, you got to get into the fifth or sixth gear when you're building something. He just raised $700 million for Wonder, and like, he also sold Jet, and he also sold diapers.com, and like here he's doing it again. It really is about like going all in on something and like caring enough and putting that energy, and you can do that from any city in the world. Yeah. But you yourself have to create that culture, and you can't be distracted by the place where you live, or if it is a distraction, go to a better environment, create a better environment, foster that thing that's going to create compounded results.
You invest at such an early stage. How do you know if a founder will have those sort of personality traits to have the grit to be able to rip the floorboards up and take out the data center, or work as tirelessly from the first couple of meetings? I know you have the residency that you can spend a lot of time with these people, but is there like a first impression that you get in meetings of a founder, like this person has what it takes to become a founder?
Yeah. I think there's two things. There's a debate in venture on whether or not VCs are psychologists or financiers. And I think in the earliest stages, you're a psychologist. In the later stages, you're a financier, right? Like later stages, market analysis and unit economics and all that. In the early stages, you're more of a psychologist in the sense that you're trying to understand pattern recognition. What drives founders? How resilient are they? What's their true ambition? And that's a very hard thing to do. Actually, Beezer and Aleph Capital just did a podcast about this topic. I thought it was fascinating. But underlying it is, and the reason I'm at Antler is because we don't write checks up front, right? So we can work with many more founders in our residency, 4% of people who apply. And after we work with them, invest in only the ones that have demonstrated this kind of grit, tenacity, ambition, resilience, bias towards action, ability to sell, and ability to lead, right? And so we get this asymmetric information on these people, and then we can invest afterwards. The effect of that is a much more selective investment rate for our LPs. We're only investing about 0.4% of people rather than the VC industry of 1%. Yeah. But we're working with many more people up front. So we're using that time in the residency to understand if they have what it takes relative to all those dynamics we talked about. Yep. To do that, right, you obsess over the questions you ask in your interviews, how you ask those questions, what you're looking for in those questions, how people respond. This is like the first filter, right? Once they're in the residency, how hard are they working? Like, what does it look like? Are they actually putting their hands on their keyboards, or are they on a whiteboard, right? Are they building something, or are they, coming up with some crazy ideas?
Theorizing,
exactly.
Like all this shit on the board right here. That's helpful.
Exactly.
It's nice though. You kind of need those moments to be able to be on the whiteboard.
Totally.
But I think you're saying earlier on, you got to start putting your work into action, not just thinking the whole time.
You can't whiteboard for 8 weeks. You can whiteboard for like 30 seconds and then go build something, then whiteboard for a couple hours and then build something. Yep. But those cycles need to be fast, right? You like every day you're building, every day you're selling, every day you're learning. If you do those things in quick succession, Brian Armstrong says action creates information. I love that. It's like, if you out in the world, if you're like pushing on things and talking to people and you're wrong and you're right, and like you're learning all these data points, or Paul Graham's like do things that don't scale, right? Like all of these greats all say a lot of the same things. If you like listen to them and you study them and you distill it down, like the playbook is clear. It's just a lot of people aren't willing to do it.
Yeah. It's a big sacrifice, but it's up to the founder. Like, how hard do you want to work to be able to get to, the Mark Lauries or like the Reid Hoffmans of the world one day? You mentioned that in a lot of these interviews, you're speaking with founders, and I'm curious, what's a cliche that you hear so often in these interviews that just cringes you out, and you hear it often, and you just are done with it now?
Well, the first one that bothers me is, where are you calling from? Right? It's like every single person, every Zoom call is like, where are you calling from? And I know they're just trying to like relieve the tension, and I know that they're like,
it's a good icebreaker question.
Yeah, it's like this icebreaker thing. But like when I was leading sales teams, right? When you sit in front of a high-powered executive, right? You don't walk in that meeting and be like, let's talk about the weather. Like a lot of people do. Yeah. Most people do actually, but the best salespeople do not. Okay. The best salespeople know that this executive, whoever they might be, is coming from other meetings, is flying at an altitude of massive impact. They're thinking about like real problems in the world, real problems in their company, real problems at home with their family. And your ability to right-size a conversation for someone is respectful of their time. Like your ability to walk in there and at 50,000 feet tell them the problem that you are there to solve with 1,000 foot level credibility on that problem allows someone to understand, is this an important meeting for me to be part of, right? And so like when you get a chance to talk to someone who can like fund your business or introduce you to customers or be a board member or really anything, Like the compassionate thing to do is not to sit there and like burn 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes on like, how's the weather? How's this? How's that? I'm not saying don't build rapport, but just do it in the context of what's good for you is good for me. Right. And so you can show up to that meeting and say, hey, Jeff, I read this post you did on a Monday morning meeting, and I know that you're thinking about companies that look like this and look like that. The reason I want to spend time with you today is because I know that you're trying to XYZ, return your fund, find founders that do this, do that. I'd love to, A, take ownership of this call and tell you exactly what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, why I'm passionate about it. And if you have questions after that, or if you have questions you want to start with, I'm happy to do that. Like, the idea when you're fundraising is to stand out.
Right.
And so few people take control of the call. So few people set an agenda. So few people right-size the conversation. They show up, they're like, how's the weather? How are your kids? Where are you calling from? I'm like, stop with that.
Let's do an exercise. I'm a VC, you're a founder. How in the first 30 seconds are you going to get my attention to stand out amongst the crowd?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty simple. Like first, research the person.
Yeah.
So if you're a VC and I'm a founder, hey, listen, Jackson, I know that you've invested in some amazing companies that do X, Y, and Z, right? I will be raising money at some point. I'm not right now because the team is building, the team is selling and growing. But I think where you can be most valuable for me is if I could share with you a few dynamics of my business and get your input on this. Ultimately, I'm going to work with people that I think can add value to the company because we're going to build a top 1% type of company. If you and I can work together well and make decisions and learn from one another, I think that's a good place to start our relationship. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to take the first 15 minutes and go through some of those dynamics. The second 15 minutes, you could tell me a bit about what you think about that business and about those ideas. If you and I can jam well together, maybe we set up another call to go deeper on the economics of the business, the team, and some of the things that I think will make us $1 billion company. How does that sound for you?
I'm going to write a term sheet right now just to give you that so you can sign. I feel like a lot of VCs that when they hear the phrase like we're not raising right now, but we're working and we can get back to you later, they just hear that and then it's kind of like.
Well, yeah, because everyone's trying to game the fundraise. But the reality is, as a founder, you shouldn't be fundraising from people that won't add value. And so when I'm talking to you, I'm not fundraising.
But it's kind of tough because if you're needing capital, then it's like, damn, I need money almost more than I need value right now because, and maybe that's short-sighted.
I think it is.
Okay.
Right? Because like, listen, everyone has different financial considerations.
Right.
Some people like need money now, but there's nothing worse as an investor than being approached and being asked for money right away. It's like, you want to build a relationship with someone that you're going to work with for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? And there's this old saying, it's like if you ask for advice, you get money. But if you ask for money, you get advice, right? So like you go to an investor and you ask for money, you're going to get advice.
Yeah.
Why not first start with, let's decide if we can work well together. Let's do this as a job interview. I'm going to interview you. If you might be a board member of mine, I want to know if I want you helping me make decisions or not.
Yeah.
If I do, maybe I'll pitch you on the equity of my company. But if we can't, then like it doesn't even matter anyway.
Right.
Right? And the same is true in sales. Like the thing that I just did with the, agenda setting, it's about being in the challenger zone, not like the friend court. It's like being in a position where I'm the CEO. I'm going to run a multi-billion-dollar company someday. I need you to believe that I can run those meetings, right? And so I'm going to show up the way I'm going to show up in my board meetings, with my customers, the way I'm going to show up with my employees. And if after that, if you appreciate that and you like the style of how I operate, I'm happy to take you into the details of the business. I'm happy to see if we would work well together. And if we do, then like hopefully you'll want the equity and it might be the best favor I ever did for you, right? Like these investors that came in early on, like Uber and Airbnb and some of these others, it's like the best favor that Brian Chesky ever did, letting Paul Graham in for $20,000 for 6%, or Sequoia in at $375 for 20% of the business. Like, yeah, it might have sounded crazy then to put air mattresses in apartments, but like, and I'm sure Brian was like needing the money at the time, right? He was out selling like cereal and he was at the Republican Democratic conventions and he was grinding for those dollars. But like at the end of the day, he did them a huge favor letting him on the cap table.
Yeah.
Right? And so like, if you don't have that mindset that like failure is not an option and that I'm going to win and that this thing's going to be big, then like, yeah, I can understand why people are trying to convince you to join and buy the equity rather than, no, this equity is worth so much more than you're willing to pay me for it. Yeah. We should actually be negotiating like the valuation here because it's going to be worth way more than you think it is.
For sure.
And like that mindset, that like belief in what you're building, belief in who you are, it's a hard thing to ingrain in people when you find it or when you see it. It's like very obvious. It's very obvious.
Getting more specific too, because like let's take us for example, right? Yeah. We're not the traditional VC-backed company. We're not like fintech or AI or these companies that can 1,000x in a couple of years, or we're media. And so for us, it's a little tougher to sell the idea that we're going to be a multi-billion-dollar company one day. Sure. So whenever we do fundraise, I'm not asking for advice, but it's a little more. I hear what you're saying though. It's difficult, but how hard do you want to try to fundraise? What would you, if you were an investor, looking to, or hearing my pitch, right?
Yeah.
What would you want to hear from me?
What's the largest media company in the world?
In the world? Fox.
How big are they?
Several $1 billion.
Several billion.
And how long did that take to get there?
I don't know. You tell me.
Decades.
Decades.
Yeah.
How long are you in this for?
Until the day I die.
So there you go.
Perfect.
Like, I think anything is possible, right? Like, I don't think that it's a function of like, is this business in its current state going to be worth billions?
Okay.
It's like, is this person running this business the kind of person that will create something worth billions?
Yeah.
And is the thing that they're starting with, is it interesting? Is it a narrow enough market where they can win the whole thing, where the core of their business can become profitable, where that profit can spin out and create adjacent possibilities, right? Adjacent possibilities are essentially things that become possible because of what you do first. Or if you look at the iPhone as a good example, like other people tried to build the phone before Steve Jobs, right?
Yeah.
But batteries were getting smaller, the touch screens were getting more effective, the cameras were getting better, the cloud infrastructure or the Wi-Fi and all these, phone services were getting better. Those things, all those industries getting better simultaneously created the adjacent possibility of the phone.
Okay.
And so the question you got to ask with any business is like, what are these adjacent possibilities that are going to arise? Like if you build a media business on the backs of, founders and investors and all this stuff that's going on, and the world continues to evolve the way it has, meaning everything becomes technology, right? How big will that market get? We don't know. But like when you're sitting on all that data or all those relationships, what becomes possible? What distribution advantages do you have? What sort of things can you monetize? What sort of ways can you operate or products can you create? And like, we can't really tell that now, right? At our stage, pre-seed and seed. And so that's why I said it's more about the psychology. Like, is this person never going to give up? Do they have ambitions to change the world? Do they really think that they're capable of it? Do they have some level of like imposter syndrome that's going to cause them to work harder than other people, right? Like, is that true to their core and their nature? Or is it just that like they're telling that story because they want to get funding so they can build a business?
Yeah.
And many more people are in that latter category of like, fund my business so that I can, get a quick exit, or maybe it'll get really big and that's amazing. And like, it's so nebulous, but nebulous sort of leads to mediocrity in my opinion.
Okay.
That's not to say that some people can't compound a business something great without the intention up front.
Right.
But more times than not, like there are people here that are out there to do something meaningful.
Is that not what a lot of VCs want though? Is some sort of, maybe even a quick exit if it's something that's like, man, this is not a, if this isn't going to return the fund kind of investment. So I want a quicker return. I want a quicker exit. I want some sort of way to get liquidity. But I guess that's more of my question. Isn't that kind of some of the model of VC nowadays? Or not nowadays?
I think that if you're not in the finance world, you look at the finance world and you say, okay, I can like raise money from friends and family. I can raise money from venture capitalists. Venture capitalists want to 1,000x their fund or whatever it might be, which is not very likely, but some of the greats are like 93x, 55x.
Yeah. Like
we can go deeper on those if you want. But like, these VCs want massive returns. But as an outsider, you look at it and you're like, it's kind of binary, like a small, kind of bootstrap business, friends and family, or this like hyper venture scale thing with a lot of pressure. But that's not true, right? Like there's rich people that you can go to, there's family offices, there's like, convertible notes, there's like all kinds of ways to finance things. Like you could sell a product and get profit and then put that into your business. You could start something really small that has subscription revenues, and you can do revenue-based financing. There's like endless creativity to finance a business. And so if you ask yourself like, what do I truly want to build? How do I want to spend my time and my life? And what sort of things do I want to actually work on? And what sort of headaches do I want? If that's venture scale, great, like go for it. Shoot for the moon, come with that conviction and energy, build something on that treadmill. But like, that's not right for like 99% of people. There's like many other ways to finance businesses, many other ways to operate that come with less headaches and, less like accountability to somebody else. Like VC money is not your money, and it's like people lose sight of that, but it's like very, very clear that like many CEOs will get replaced in later rounds when like they don't have what it takes to take it the distance to return the fund that it previously invested. And so like those are things that you don't find out till later, and people kind of get on that venture treadmill because they feel like it's the only option. So I would just challenge founders to like right size ambition relative to execution. And it's like, that's okay to have a small exit. You can start a business that does 10 million in revenue, exit for 40, totally changes your life and your whole family's life, and you retire on a beach and like things are great. Like there are amazing, like especially AI tools right now that are spinning up in subscription revenue. Like there's no reason you can't just flip that thing and have a great life. But that's great for a lot of people. Venture funding should be reserved for people that really want to do something that is think about the Facebooks and the Airbnbs and the Ubers and the things that were born out of Silicon Valley that are just like tremendous game changers in the world. And there's a group of people that really wants to spend their life doing that.
Yeah.
And like that's a product for a certain type of people, a certain type of return.
I saw this post on LinkedIn recently. It said that, founders who get an exit, there's 3 types of exits.
Okay.
There's one that will get you a new car, there's an exit that will get you a new house, and there's an exit that will get you a whole new life.
Okay.
When you, given that kind of framework, if a founder comes to you and says, yeah, I'm looking for an exit that, the new car or the new house kind of exit, does that really turn you off to the idea of investing in that founder?
For sure. A new car, a new house is that's like the lowest of low ambitions, right? Like I don't need someone to say they want to change the world or that they want to change their life, right?
Okay.
But at a minimum, they have to care about what they're building.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to wake up every day and put 12, 15, 18 hours into something? Are you going to make it your identity? You're going to talk to your friends and family about it? Are you going to recruit the best people in the world? Are you going to inspire people on this vision? Like, you don't build mediocre shit with epic people. You build epic shit with epic people, right? And you like, I don't know how to maybe describe this more acutely, but like if you are not bought into what you're doing and inspired by what you're doing, other people won't feel that.
Yeah.
And so like as the founder, if you can be 100% invested in what it is you're building, maybe it'll be a house or a car, right? And that's okay because you were so passionate, and that's just where the market headwinds and the problems that came across ultimately stopped you, right? And you maybe didn't have the resilience, or maybe there are external factors that caused you to stop. But at a bare minimum, like care about what you're doing, care about the energy you're putting into it, make it something you're proud of. That's like your full potential. And if you do that, then like the outcome is it's a byproduct of that, right? And I wouldn't blame someone for having the house or the car exit if they were passionate enough to have the life-changing exit. Similarly, like if you're only in it for the life-changing exit, but you're not passionate about the product or passionate about what you're doing, it's really difficult. Right? Like how are you going to get up every day and inspire other people to join you on this mission?
Yeah.
Of course, there's like examples of other versions of great companies that were started where that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
But, I think that generally if you're going to spend your life on something or your life's work is going to be something, you should enjoy it, you should inspire others. That in itself is a great bar, and like the outcomes will take care of themselves, and they're not always going to be winners.
Jeff, the last question, and then I'll let you go. We're meeting with a lot of VCs this week to film today and Friday and ask similar questions. And I feel like the cameras aren't even on us because we've been flowing. It's been a great conversation. Yeah. But our conversation is a little bit different. You are our lead investor. Antler's our lead investor. And so I feel like I have to ask you here now, because you know us the best out of any other person we're talking to, what piece of advice would you give our company, Demo Day, as we hear media isn't a venture backable model. There's no room for media in venture. And as we continue to grow and scale and maybe raise more money one day, what piece of advice would you give us hearing all that and knowing where we are right now? Yeah,
it's a great question. I think it's a few things: intrinsic value in the company, an investor-founder fit, and then certainly compounding that execution. So on that first, the intrinsic value, Eric Paley, I think he's like a 5 times Midas lister. He had this tweet thread where he talked about growth curves compounding in both negative and positive directions. So like if you spend $1 to make 99 cents, you're going to compound to 0. Yeah. If you spend $1 to make $5, you're going to compound with diminishing returns, but still very positive. And you need to spend time to understand the customer value you're creating, the unit economics of that, and that internal business. And is it investable? Is it compounding positive or negative? Right? So focusing on that first before you fundraise, having something that's investable is a function of that intrinsic value that's being created in the model and how it's compounding in which direction. For sure. The second is about investor-founder fit. So as you talk to a lot of investors, they're investing in 1% of what they see. In some cases, in our case, 0.4% of what we see. And so they're highly selective. In some cases, they're making 1 or 2 bets a year. And so you've got to assume going into every conversation that like it's probably not going to be a fit. And so instead of like just pitching and trying to get someone to say yes, you actually flip the script on that, and you actually talk to them about, let me share more about my business and get your thoughts. Let's see how we operate together. Let's think about the ways in which you would operate my business, the hurdles that I'm coming up against. Can you add value to me? Yeah. Is there something here that's interesting? Let me take you deeper into those unit economics and compounding growth, and let's see how you feel about it. And if you see the same future that I see, and if we would work well as a unit in creating this kind of value and creating this decacorn or centacorn or whatever you want to call it. And if you can do that, if you can flip the script in the investor meeting, you're going to start to create some resonance and culture fit across the people you meet. And the more that happens, right, you're going to be able to brainstorm more effectively, get excited about ideas, think about the ways in which this thing could scale. And then once those people are bought in, they're naturally going to want to invest because they see your decision making, they see your ambition, they see your execution, they understand that intrinsic value that you've created, and then they start to see the world the way you see it, right? And so it's a longer process to get an investor to appreciate the things you appreciate because you're spending, 80 hours a week for the last, year or two, where they might just be coming to this recently, or they might have some other company or predecessor that tried and failed, and so they're coming at it from a different lens.
Yeah.
You bring them into your world, you open it up, and then you show them the execution. And I think like stretching that out is going to be a game changer because I've worked with you and I know what you're doing is amazing.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Fired up, Jeff. Appreciate it, man. Thanks again. Thanks.
Yeah.